it doesn't really bother me so much when people get facts wrong, get the occasional fact wrong. It's not a big deal as far as I'm concerned. I think a big part of that is because, to me, a theory's got to um, it's got to explain a lot of facts. In fact, science, for example, demands that any theory takes into account all available evidence. Okay, so the idea that a person gets the occasional fact wrong, it shouldn't do that much to harm the theory. Okay, if it's taking into account a lot of facts, okay, an occasional fact wrong should not alter it all that much. It's the reliability, the robustness of the theory is how much it can take into account. Um, your defense of Steven Crowder's video, you chose a very concrete method. As you took each fact one by one and then proved it was true, therefore implying that his conclusion was correct. I don't think so. All those facts can be correct, but the conclusion can still be wrong. Right? What you did, I think, is something a lot of conservatives do, and you operate at a very concrete level, but a lot of times the more abstract patterns escape your attention, and to me, those abstractions are very, very obvious. Now, what I saw with Steven Crowder's video, from what I saw from your video, is that he has a very large amount of confirmation bias. I think he has it. I think Fox News has it. I think you have it too. Maybe you're blind to it. Maybe that's why you engage in it so much, is because you don't recognize it. But let me explain confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is basically going into any sort of investigation or research with some preconceived notion of what you're going to find there, and then looking for the evidence to support your conclusion, and then not looking any further or looking anywhere else. Okay, so what Steven Crowder did in his video, that's confirmation bias, was he looked at Detroit and he showed all the buildings, and then he showed the liberal Democrats who ran the town, and therefore all the blame goes on the Democrats, right? Well, the thing he didn't take into account is during that same time period, we had a wave of conservatives who took over Washington, D.C., starting with Reagan, who, Reagan, Bush, Gingrich, second Bush, and Milton Friedman, free market economics. They just set about dismantling the New Deal that FDR created, set about demolishing regulations. The government was suddenly the bad guys. The government couldn't do any good. All right, we had to let the free market decide everything. Okay. Now, why isn't it as much the responsibility of the federal government for what happened in Detroit as the local government? Wouldn't that make sense? I mean, they both make laws that affect Detroit. Okay? Maybe the federal government has got problems that show up in towns like Detroit because they're particularly vulnerable. Maybe it's a combination of having a conservative federal government and a liberal local government. So that was never mentioned. Never mentioned at all. Okay? What the conservatives did and the Milton Friedman free market economics did was they rewarded CEOs for shipping jobs overseas. Labor became a race to the bottom to find the cheapest place on earth to build stuff. And that's where the jobs went. And it undermined the U.S. economy, because economy is circulation. It's not money going to the rich. Money goes to the rich and stays there. That's not an economy at all. That's called people are rich and everyone else has nothing, there's no economy there. Okay? Economy depends upon circulation, the circulation of currency, the circulation of goods. And you need to have a reasonably well-paid labor class in order for an economy to work. And that's exactly what was undermined by Reaganomics and shipping jobs overseas, is that our economy was undermined. Now, I don't see that discussed at all by people like Steven Crowder or yourself, okay? Now, I'm not going to say that the unions are completely fault-free. I think that any social organization is capable of having corrupt leadership, okay? And I think there are systematic problems that we have to concern ourselves with all social organizations, be they corporations or unions or governments, churches, that they have to have a certain amount of transparency, that we need rules for how we're going to prevent the leadership in these social organizations from becoming corrupt. That's one of the biggest challenges we face. It's not liberal or conservative. There's something in the middle. There's the social organizations we need to get a handle on, because our biggest problem is corruption. So the confirmation bias is very obvious to me, okay? And it's what I don't like about Fox News. It's what my principal complaint with you is. And again, it's missing the forest for the trees. The confirmation bias prevents you from seeing the larger picture. And the larger picture is that it's not just liberals in Detroit, it's conservatives in Washington. So, anyways, that's all I gotta say for now.